came, and I desperately tried to stay still and show no reaction. But when the fourth knock came routinely, I decided enough was enough. I should confront this jerk like a real man. I turned to the window and just barely caught a glimpse of a black shadow quickly moving under the window. For some reason, actually seeing something at the window killed any courage I had, and I ran to the kitchen phone and called the police. They said they would have an officer over in 10 minutes. When I hung up, I saw something in the corner of my eye. I turned my head and saw somebody standing outside my kitchen window, surely looking at me. Only for a second though, because as soon as I noticed, he took off. Somebody was watching me through all the windows. Then I received a disturbing phone call. It was my neighbor, who also happens to be my best friend. He happened to notice through his window that 3 people dressed in black had walked onto my property earlier. One of them with a sharp, shiny object in his hand. This only made me panic even more. I ran upstairs where I knew I couldn't be watched and hid in the bathroom. I heard constant single knocks at the front door downstairs. No way it was the police. I just prayed they would get there in time. And thankfully, moments after the knocking stopped, I heard heavy banging at the front door followed by someone screaming, "Police!" It turned out to be the cops, but whoever the 3 men were, they had already gotten into the woods. It might have been more than 3. I don't even know. All I know is they were never caught, and that I went out to get blinds the same week. Story number 3. I opened the blinds of the window that was facing the bushes and was greeted by the face of a huge man who I instantly recognized as Tom's dad. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, he was already gone. When my dad came home early because of the situation, we went on to get a restraining order as soon as possible. Tom and his dad moved out about a month after that. Story number 4. I moved into a house that my aunt and uncle had been renting out for several years after they built a new place. I spent a few months alone before a buddy from work asked if I was looking for a roommate. I thought about it for a few days and ended up allowing him to move in. It was a 2-bedroom place with a den office in the garage. He decided he wanted his own space as the bedrooms were right next to each other, so he moved his stuff into the office in the garage. I have to admit, it was a pretty cool setup he had. The only problem was he didn't have a bathroom or kitchen out there, so he would use the kitchen and toilet inside the house. We worked different schedules, so I would often leave the house unlocked for him. One night, I went to my girlfriend's house for dinner. After I got back, I decided to grab a 6-pack of beer I had bought the previous night. When I opened the fridge, my beer was gone. I assumed it was my roommate and went into a blind rage. I stormed out into the garage and slammed his bedroom door open. He was sleeping and rolled over. I screamed at him, asking why he drank my beer without asking. He said he didn't touch my beer and rubbed the sleep out of his eyes. Having lived with him for a while, I was pretty good at judging when he was lying. I felt he was telling the truth. Place. The TV was there, all the furniture was there. But when I went into my bedroom, I realized my $2,200 laptop was gone. That's when we began to panic. My buddy called the cops, and we searched high and low for the beer and laptop, thinking maybe I had misplaced them. We soon gave up and began to search the yard for whoever had done this. We didn't live completely alone in this house, though. There was a room that had been built several years after the house was first constructed. My aunt's dying mother had spent her last couple of years living there, as it was easy for my aunt and uncle to care for her during her sickness. When she died, they began to rent the room out to a strange woman before eventually moving out themselves and renting the rest of the house to me. at night due to some silly childhood fear I've held onto into adulthood. The next morning, I asked my roommate what was so important at 3 o'clock a.m. that he would need to try and get in my room. He told me he slept through the night and hadn't even gotten up to go to the bathroom. My heart sank. I told him what had happened during the night. I have never been more glad that I locked my door at night. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if I had left my bedroom door open and that man had gotten into my room. Needless to say, me and my buddy moved out of that place a few weeks later. Story number 5. It happened on my friend's 21st birthday. We were throwing him a big party filled with alcohol. There were a lot of people I didn't know, and the house was chaotic. There were probably 100 people, but even in all the chaos, I noticed one shady character that stood out. There was an older man sitting in the corner of the room, just kind of watching everybody drink and dance. I didn't think much about it at first, assuming he was someone's dad or uncle or something. But as the night died down and more than half of the guests had already left, the man was still there, by himself in the corner. At that point, I asked one of my friends who that guy was, and he said he had no idea. We decided to wait until most of the guests had left, figuring maybe he would too. When the last of the guests were gone, we went back into the living room and surely enough, he was gone. I felt relieved immediately, even though it wasn't even my house. That man just seemed so out of place, and it was downright creepy. Me and a couple of other friends slept over that night. I slept on the couch in the den. Falling asleep was easy with all the alcohol running through my veins, but staying asleep was a problem. I woke up in the middle of the night feeling insanely thirsty and needing to go to the bathroom. I first went to the bathroom since it was closer, and then went up to the kitchen and got a glass of water. When I went back down to the den and laid back down on the couch, I noticed that the sliding door to the coat closet across from the couch had been slightly slid open. It was too dark to see anything else though, like anything inside of it. I felt a chill run down my spine as I remembered the creepy man sitting in the corner. The idea of that man hiding in the closet immediately popped into my mind. I continued to lay still, under the assumption that he was watching me through the open door of the closet. I began to plan my escape. I could jump over the other couch and land right next to the stairway upstairs to the living room, but I just had to gather up the courage to do it. Then, I saw the closet door slide open a little more, and that's when I got the courage to run for it. I jumped over the couch and ran up the stairs. I could hear the closet door fully slide open and somebody running after me. I screamed at my friends, who were on the couches, to wake up. All 3 of my friends that were in the living room woke up and looked at me as if I were crazy. I knew that we now outnumbered him 4-1, so I looked at the stairs and waited, but he never came up. My friends demanded an explanation, so I told them that the creepy man from earlier was hiding in the coat closet and almost chased me up the stairs. Just then, we heard the back door from down in the den open up, and we all looked at each other. We called the cops, but the man was never found. He simply left through the back door. Story number 6. When I was going to college in North Carolina, I started working at a local TJ Maxx store for some extra cash. Since I was in class during the day, I usually worked the later shifts. One night I was walking to my car. It must have been about 11 o'clock or 11:30. As a safety protocol, all the employees left together, and the security guard would watch from the sidewalk to make sure we all got to our cars safely. I was approaching my car when I heard a vehicle pull up behind me. I turned around, and there was a woman with her teenage daughter sitting in the passenger seat. She rolled her window down and started giving me a story about how they had just come into town to visit family, but were out of gas and had no money. Then she asked if they could borrow a few dollars. I told her the truth, that I had no cash on me since I never carry cash. She looked at me and, very hurriedly, asked if I would get into the car with them, go to the gas station, and buy them about $10 worth of gas. Obviously, I said no. She asked a few more times. It wasn't until I had said no again that I noticed the daughter in the passenger seat. She had been staring at me the whole time, licking her lips and wringing her fingers. At that point, I bolted back to the store where the security guard was. Because they had pulled up right behind my car, I would have been stuck there. I told the guard what had happened. He started walking toward their car, and they sped away. Story number 7. Working the night shift always sucked. I worked in an office building and constantly took the night shift, since it was the only time that worked out for me. I was almost always the only person on my floor, possibly in the whole building. There was always this eerie feeling about being in such a big place with most of the lights out and absolutely no one around. On the upside, it was peaceful and less stressful, and I was able to get a lot of work done. But then there was this one night. It was a Friday night, around 2 o'clock in the morning. I was typing away on my keyboard when I heard a noise outside my cubicle. It sounded like a random crack from the walls or something. Unusual for this building, but nothing to worry about. I kept working. A few minutes later, I was interrupted again, this time by the sound of a computer starting up. It caught me off guard. I was sure nobody else was scheduled for the night shift. I stood up on my chair to peek over the cubicle walls. In the dark, I could see the glare of a computer screen coming from a cubicle on the opposite side of the room. Then I did something I regret. I called out, asking if anyone was there, hoping to hear an answer from a fellow employee. Instead, I saw the glowing monitor suddenly switch off. The opposite side of the room sank back into darkness. My nerves spiked. I shut off my own lamp and computer so I wouldn't give away my position. Then I crouched low and quietly moved into a nearby cubicle. Utter silence filled the building. I sat there, waiting for anything to happen. God knows how long I stayed like that. Eventually, I convinced myself the coast was clear. I tiptoed past the cubicles toward the exit door leading to the stairwell and elevators. That's when I froze. In the corner of the room, crouched behind a tall plant, was a man, dressed in all black. My stomach dropped. He didn't seem to realize that I had spotted him. I slowly turned back toward the stairwell door. There was no way I was waiting for an elevator. I pushed the door open, slipped inside, and let it close softly behind me. 2 flights down, the silence shattered. The door above me burst open, slamming against the wall, followed by manic footsteps echoing violently down the stairs coming fast. I ran. My heart pounded as I raced down the stairwell, footsteps right behind me growing louder with every turn. I finally hit the first floor, sprinted through the lobby, and burst out the front doors. Whoever was chasing me never followed. I called the cops immediately, along with my boss. My boss confirmed what I already feared. No one else was scheduled to be in the building that night. The police searched the place top to bottom. Nothing. The only description I could give them was that the man was dressed in all black. I forced myself to keep doing the night shift for another week. My boss let me lock all possible entrances to the floor, including the elevators. But no matter how many precautions I took, I never felt comfortable again. Ever since then, I've only worked day shifts. Story number 8. It was 4 a.m. on a Saturday night when I woke up to my stomach rumbling. Nothing is worse than trying to sleep on an empty stomach, so I got out of bed and made my way to the kitchen to make a sandwich. Immediately, I noticed something odd. The cabinet was open. I'm obsessive about closing everything I open, so I couldn't believe I had left it like that. Most people would just shrug, shut the cabinet, and move on. But me? I couldn't let it go. I decided to investigate the house. I checked every closet, but there was no one. Then I went down to the den, and that's when I froze. The back door was wide open. My stomach dropped. Someone had been in my house. I don't know where I got the nerve, but I stepped outside and switched on the patio light. That's when I saw him. A man was sitting calmly in one of the patio chairs. He looked at me with a blank expression before slowly standing up. He was filthy, his hair long, hanging to his shoulders, his clothes dirty. He started walking toward me. I couldn't read his intentions. For a moment, I just stood there, almost convinced he might be harmless. But then, out of nowhere, he lunged at me. I barely managed to slam the door shut and lock it. For 10 long seconds, we just stared at each other through the glass. His eyes locked on mine, unblinking. Then it hit me. I shouldn't just be standing there. I bolted to the kitchen, grabbed the phone, and began dialing the cops. When I looked back toward the patio, he was gone. I still called the police, but nothing was ever found of the man. Story number 9. This is a very weird story that took place just a few months ago. I still live in the same house where it happened. In my bedroom, there's an electrical outlet under my bed that I use to charge my phone. Every night, I leave my phone on the ledge above my bed, usually using it as my alarm. But something strange started happening on a Monday night in February. I woke up to my phone's alarm blasting, but it was still dark out. Confused, I glanced at my real alarm clock on my desk. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. I checked my phone and saw a new alarm titled, "Down." I hadn't set that alarm. Still, I shut it off and went back to sleep, trying not to overthink it. The next night, it happened again. My phone's alarm went off at 3 a.m. This time, the alarm title read, "Beneath." My stomach dropped. There was no way I had set that alarm. I figured maybe my brother was messing with me, so the next morning I told my dad to have him stop. But my brother swore on his life that he had never touched my phone, and the way he said it, I actually believed him. That night, I decided to be extra careful. I set a password on my phone and even wrote it down on a sticky note for safekeeping. I hid the note behind my bed so no one could see. Then I checked only one alarm was set for 8 o'clock a.m. I fell asleep feeling a little better. But once again, I woke up to the sound of my phone's alarm. This time it was 2 o'clock a.m. The alarm title read, "The." Now I was freaked out. Something was seriously wrong. The next day, I left my phone powered off all day, hoping whoever or whatever was messing with it would forget about me. That night, I decided to rely on my real alarm clock on my desk instead. I set it for 8 o'clock a.m. and went to sleep. But when I woke up in the dark, my alarm clock was off. Instead, my phone was blaring again even though I'd left it off. It had been moved back onto the ledge above my bed, and the sound coming from it wasn't a normal ringtone. It was some kind of distorted screaming mixed with applause. I shut it off and saw the alarm title, "Bed." The time was 1 o'clock a.m. That's when it all clicked. The 4 alarms formed a sentence, "Down beneath the bed." Terrified, I reached down to grab my charger from the outlet beneath my bed, but it wasn't there. And then, at the worst possible moment, I felt it. A hand. It grabbed my arm and squeezed tight. I screamed louder than I ever had before, so loud the neighbors must have heard. My parents' bedroom door slammed open, and I heard footsteps racing to my room. My dad burst in with a baseball bat. He saw me being dragged toward the edge of my bed. Without hesitation, he reached under, grabbed the man hiding beneath, and yanked him out. One swing of the bat knocked him out cold. The cops were called, and when they arrived, they told us who he was, a registered sex offender who had already been arrested 10 times. He was deeply disturbed and apparently gained pleasure from tormenting and scaring his victims. The scariest part? He had been living under my bed for 4 straight days. Story number 10. The most horrifying experience I've ever had didn't even directly happen to me, it happened to my friend, who I'll call Ty. We used to hang out or at least text every single day. But one day, he didn't respond to any of my texts or calls. That was strange. I walked over to his house just a block away to check on him. His car was in the driveway. but no one answered when I knocked or rang the bell. I left, figuring maybe he just wanted to be left alone. Later that night, though, I got a FaceTime request from an unknown number. I hesitated but answered, keeping the camera pointed away from my face, and then a face popped up on the screen. It was Ty. I immediately felt relieved and showed my face, but something was wrong. He looked different, tired, paranoid, and he wasn't in his house. The room behind him was unfamiliar. I asked where he was, why he hadn't been answering. He said he was fine, that he was at home. But when I asked whose phone he was using, he froze. For a long time, he just stared at the camera, silent, until finally muttering that it was his uncle's phone. Before I could press further, he suddenly blurted out a demand that I lend him $10,000, promising to pay me back. At first I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but his face told me otherwise. He was dead serious and terrified. I asked him why. Again, silence. Just that blank stare. Finally, he said he had to go, and the call ended. It was one of the strangest, most unnerving experiences of my life. Something was clearly wrong, but it was late, so I told myself I'd just talk to him the next day. The following morning, I went back to his house and rang the bell at least 10 times. No answer. I gave up, frustrated. But late that night, around the same time, I got another FaceTime call from an unknown number. It was Ty again. Only this time, he looked horrible. His hair was a mess, there was a cut on his forehead, dark bags under his eyes. He looked broken. He wouldn't explain anything. He just kept begging me to send $10,000 to some random address. I refused, demanding to know what was happening. That's when he said something that haunts me to this day. In a shaky, nervous voice, he muttered, "Come on, don't point a gun at my back." My blood ran cold, and then I saw it. The tiniest twitch of his left eye, a wink. My stomach dropped. He was trying to tell me something. The call ended abruptly. By some miracle, I remembered the address he had mentioned. I called the cops immediately and gave it to them. They raided the place, an abandoned house miles away in a deserted part of town. Inside, in the basement, they found Ty. He had been beaten senseless and left for dead, but they got to him just in time. The sicko who did it was already long gone. Ty doesn't like to talk about it, but he told me the bare minimum. He was walking home when everything suddenly went black. He woke up chained in a dark basement.